So, for the 8 of you who don't follow me on Twitter, and actually I have no guarantee that the 8 people following me on Twitter came from this YouTube channel, but all the same, if you don't follow me on Twitter, then you probably didn't know this, but I decided to take November off because A, I was feeling kind of burnt out with YouTube and just wasn't feeling it, and maybe it showed in my last 3 or 4 reviews, but B, I was doing NaNoWriMo, and I've done NaNoWriMo before. In fact, that's the reason I took November off in 2019 originally, because I wanted to see if I could write the great novel, and unfortunately in 2019 I ended up stopping somewhere around day 10 because of a bit of a tragedy involving my cat, but this time around there was no such misfortune, and I was actually able to finish the novel with like 8 days to spare. And I think to myself, well, it's about 8 days before I have to start worrying about holiday movies, so maybe I could get some normal reviews in. And it's also very convenient that I finished it when I did, because I just saw Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you right now. I don't care about the Ghostbusters, like, at all. I don't hate the Ghostbusters, I don't like the Ghostbusters. It is what it is, and the only strong opinion I harbor in any way, shape, or form is that 2016's Ghostbusters was terrible and didn't need to happen. In fact, I was of the opinion that the Ghostbusters franchise as a whole basically needed to stay dead and buried, but a lot of people disagreed with me because not only did we have to have our fucking Ghostbusters 3, but when 2016 was the movie that basically killed the Ghostbusters franchise dead, we had to be all, nope, not good enough, we need to do it over, and we ended up with Ghostbusters Afterlife. Combined with my general apathy for Ghostbusters, I remember hearing that this movie was going to be for the real fans, and oh, Jesus Christ, I hate that term anymore. Whenever I hear the term real fans, I immediately think of those fucking guys who call themselves alpha males outside of the fandom, and they're the kind of guys who write 50-minute essays that could easily be summarized in 2 minutes, but you have to pad the crap out of it because that's how YouTube's algorithm works now. And it can all be easily summarized as, well, you're not a real fan if you like any Star Wars trilogy other than the old trilogy, or well, you're not a real Masters of the Universe fan if you like Kevin Smith, or you're not a real fan if you don't agree with me like a lemming on every single little thing, and if you even deviate ever so slightly from my opinion, then get the fuck out of my clubhouse, you stupid little cuck. Now that's not to say that I am 100% immune to fan rage. I mean, you've seen my Mortal Kombat reviews, surely. But at the same time, I just find these people to be so exhausting anymore, and I am so tired of every single fucking thing devolving into a pissing contest like this, and I've just anymore just adopted the Brian Zane philosophy of like what you like and don't be a dick. So yeah, I really had no interest at all in going to see this movie, and if it were up to me, I probably wouldn't have even bothered. Unfortunately, I owed my wife before dragging her to Dune, and I really wanted to see Dune in the theater because that's the only way you can really experience something as out there as Dune, and she's like, fine, but I get to pick the next movie. And this was the movie she picked. So yeah, I went to see Ghostbusters Afterlife, and if I'm being entirely honest, this movie is actually very watchable. If you're going to do a 30 or 40 years later kind of movie like Ghostbusters Afterlife is doing, then the best way to do it is to have the old cast basically pass the torch to the new cast. When I first heard that this movie was in production, I had a feeling it was going to be one of those, the Ghostbusters are going to strap on the packs one more time! They're going to bust ghosts one more time! We're going to get our nostalgia fix one more time! And we were going to end up getting one of those movies that was so by the numbers and formulaic. I find myself wondering, did we really need to make this? Because we could have just stayed home and watched the first one again. And that's not what we got. I mean, we did get a reunion for 3 of the remaining Ghostbusters. Unfortunately, Egon, or the guy who played Egon, passed away, I guess. But the others were able to reunite for this movie. and they were able to pass the torch to the next generation of kids, you know, Phoebe, Podcast, whatever the older brother's name was, etc. It has all the nostalgic beats, you know, and on top of the old Ghostbusters, it has like little Stay Puft Marshmallow Men. It's got Gozar again, yeah, spoiler alert, Gozar is the villain again. And I don't want to say cop-out necessarily, but I kind of remember hearing that Gozar was the villain, and I remember thinking, really, we're doing this again? Really? The movie does kind of suffer from a lot of the problems of most modern movies that, you know, in typical Marvel movie fashion, everything is a one-liner, you know, because we got to get our tee-hees in while we can. And I remember that was kind of the deal with the original Ghostbusters, but back then it was tolerable. Nowadays it's bordering on insufferable. Aside from minor nitpicks like this, I do kind of have to find myself wondering what movie the other critics were seeing, because the other critics just nuked this movie. Like, they just dropped the bomb. That's how much they hated it. And fair enough, I suppose you could do better, but at the same time, I didn't hate it nearly as much. Like, in fact, I'm kind of wondering what movie these guys were watching. I did a little research into this movie's critical reception, and this is looking like another case where, like, the divide between the critics and the fans can be described as an absolute fucking chasm, like, bordering on Grand Canyon. And I haven't seen a divide that big since the Orville. If you like Ghostbusters, you'll like this movie. If you don't like Ghostbusters, you can probably afford to miss this movie. It's no big deal. But if you're at all curious, and this is like the first Ghostbusters anything you've seen, it's okay. You probably won't get a lot of the nostalgic references like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Men, but you could do worse. You could definitely do a lot worse. You could do 2016, for example. Overall, it's another instance where I kind of regret that I don't have half-hats in my scoring system, and one of these days I'm gonna have to fix that. But in the meantime, I'm probably going to be a little generous, and I'm going to give this movie 3 hats out of 4.